Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is D back again with MKD58 Media. I got another movie review for you guys, and this movie review is for the 2003 action horror film Underworld. All right, now Underworld is directed by Len Wiseman, starring Kate Beckinsale. It's also starring Scott Speedman, Michael Sheen, Bill Nighy, Shane Brawley, and this guy that I also want to give special spotlight to, Kevin Gravoy. I hope I'm pronouncing his name somewhat right, but he plays the Lycan named Raze, R-A-Z-E, in this movie. This kind of big, muscular black dude. Within this film, he's a little bit of a kind of a side character, a little bit of a henchman slash goon for Lucian, who's played by Michael Sheen. But I want to really give spotlight to Kevin because, one, he's a really great character in this movie. He's literally like the dopest of the Lycans in this film, outside of maybe Lucian, who's the real kind of leader of the Lycans. But outside of being one of the more badass Lycans in this movie, Kevin is also the co-creator of the whole Underworld franchise as a whole. So he's way more important to the film than maybe you would think if you just watched the movie and thought, oh, he's just one of the side characters. He's actually a way bigger part of the whole thing than a lot of people know. So just really wanted to give props to Kevin for being a co-creator of this franchise, and I'm actually a pretty big fan of. So that being said, Underworld, first one came out in 2003. I remember actually seeing this in the theaters, and the memory that stuck out to me about my theater experience watching this film is, and there's going to be spoilers in this review, or a good chance there will be spoilers in this review, but the moment when Celine slices Victor's head in half diagonally, and then there's this pause, and then the head kind of slides apart slowly or whatever. The audience really had a big reaction to that. So, and I'm a big fan of, when you see a movie and the crowd is into it and they react to what's happening on screen, that just really increases the enjoyment of seeing a movie in the theater. So that's the memory that always sticks out to me about watching this movie in the theater. So I saw this movie when it first came out way back in 2003, and I've seen it periodically multiple times over the years since then, and my most recent watching of it was literally last night. So what I thought about this movie, I'm going to start out with my pros, which there's a lot of pros about this movie, and then I have really one main negative, which gives you an idea of what kind of score this movie's probably going to get from me if I have a whole lot of good things to say and only one bad thing to say. But here we go. Alright, so pros about this movie. I really love the gothic atmosphere and mood of this film. I love the kind of lots of the architecture, just lots of the visuals in this film, that dark gothic nature it has. I really enjoy that when the material calls for it, and this material definitely calls for that, and I just love the way it comes across on screen. Love the whole look of this movie. Really the first 2, 3, maybe the first 4 films of this franchise. I love the way it looks. What else? Good action, maybe even great action, even for certain moments. And the concept is, it's very simple but very fun. The idea of vampires versus werewolves, that's a very kind of age-old idea, but the way they execute the concept here is very fun. And it's kind of simple, but the actual world and lore of this universe is actually very kind of deep and rich, and you kind of end up being curious about more and more of this world and kind of the rules of things and the history of things. So I gotta definitely give it major credit for that. Just a fun concept and a fun lore that this movie has. Also, Kate Beckinsale, star of the film. She's very likable and believable as a vampire who is a hunter of werewolves. She carries the film, but that's almost not a completely accurate way to put it, because there's lots of other great characters and moments and things happening around her, but she is the centerpiece of the film. She is the one that kind of really, if you didn't like her and didn't buy into her and really didn't like her character, there is that really would take down how much enjoyment you get out of this movie. But the fact that, at least in my case, the fact that I liked her and believed in her as her character really helps everything else. So major props to Kate Beckinsale. She also reminds me a lot of Mila Jovovich in the Resident Evil films. The kind of the same sort of badass energy and vibe. They both kind of are cut from the same cloth in terms of how their characters come across in their respective franchises. So there's that. What else do we got here? Costume, wardrobe, and set design. The costume and the wardrobe that they got going on in this film, I love it, because it's really, the Lycans have their kind of style and way they dress, and the way they dress really shows their mentality as well. You know, it very much shows the creature that they are, and likewise with the vampires, their style and the way they dress and carry themselves really reflects the creature that they are. And I really like how it looks. It comes across really well. The set design and wardrobe design for this movie is actually really good, in my opinion. Continuing more positives, the musical score. There's actually some really, during a lot of the action sequences, I actually really dig the music that is going on. Some of it almost feels like some sort of Nine Inch Nails, Trent, Reznor type thing that might be going on. But I like the music. It's not, I've never heard it get talked about a lot, so I'm sure to a lot of folks, it's not anything too special, but it really worked for me and really gave the movie even more energy, especially during some of the tense suspense sequences and action sequences and shootouts and things like that. So for me, the musical score was a big positive. More positives. Let's see here. The bloody violence. As you know, when the material calls for it, I'm a big fan of the bloody violence and things like that. This movie has that, and it's necessary for it. I mean, this is an intense, violent war between Lycans and vampires, and one of which for sure drinks a lot of blood, the vampires. So this movie has to be gory, and Lycans, I mean, they just fuck shit up. So the bloody violence has to be a part of this movie, and it's here. And I enjoy it. Vampires are getting decapitated. Werewolves are getting decapitated. It's all going on here. The gunplay, everything there. I enjoy it. What else do we got here? The endless night look of the movie. There's a sort of an endless night type vibe to this film. And if I'm not mistaken, everything in this first Underworld film takes place during the nighttime. I might be mistaken about that, but I don't remember any sequences that happened during the day. I know in Underworld Evolution, there's some moments of the sun coming out because, Selene has to hide and all this type of stuff. But as far as the first Underworld, I don't remember any daytime sequences. So that endless night type nature of the movie gives it a very surreal, kind of dark fantasy type vibe to it, which I really enjoy. So that's another positive. So I'll leave it there for the positives. Like I said, a lot of good things for me personally to say about this movie. Now my one main negative about this film, and I know other kind of movie snobs will have things to say, like in terms of the acting wasn't good in this movie or or something like that. Acting wise, there wasn't anything exceptional, but there wasn't anything that stood out to me as bad. Nothing where I actually noticed it, where I stopped and was almost taken out of the film by some horrid acting. It was all very serviceable. It was all very everybody accomplished what they needed to accomplish in terms of acting performances. Nothing stood out as a fantastic performance. Just give that person all the Oscars. Nothing stood out like that, but nothing stood out as being really bad. And I also will say, you don't see this type of movie expecting to see super exceptional acting. You know what I mean? So acting wasn't an issue for me in this film. So But that being said, the negative I want to point out, Michael's character. When I very first saw this movie, I felt this way back in 2003. I was super underwhelmed by his character. Considering the fact that his character is supposed to be a hybrid, I remember back then expecting his character to be way more impressive once he changed. I was expecting him to be way more impressive than he actually turned out to be, just from a visual perspective. He didn't really, they didn't do as much with his character from a visual perspective as you would kind of think they would with somebody who's supposed to be a hybrid and supposed to be so quote unquote special and have the best attributes of both, Lycans and vampires. I just wasn't very impressed by his character. I was very underwhelmed. And that stood out to me very largely in the first time I saw the movie. But in my most recent viewing, because I knew what to expect from Michael's character, I was more accepting of how he was. You know what I mean? I still am underwhelmed by what they ended up doing with him from a physical aesthetic perspective, but it's just kind of everything else in the movie visually really, really, really worked for me. So I'm just kind of like, okay, I can accept that. I can accept how his character is, since everything else is so, well done in my opinion. So, but that's my only real con about this movie is the underwhelming nature of Michael's character. Okay, so my score for Underworld 2003, I'm gonna go 8.5 out of 10. And I'm going with that score. This isn't a score that's saying, hey, this is a great example of superior filmmaking and, give this movie all the awards and all that type of thing. The 8.5 is basically based off of my just personal enjoyment of the movie. I like the movie. I always have a good time with it. I like the way it looks. I'd be lying if I tried to give it some sort of low score and claimed this and that bothered me and this wasn't good and I didn't enjoy it. It'd be a lie for me to try to give this movie a low score knowing I really enjoy this film. So regardless of what other people think about it, I had a good time with it, and I always have a good time with it. And the movie, my feelings about the movie have actually grown even more positive than they were when I first saw the movie, and I generally liked the movie the first time I saw it. So this movie has actually gotten stronger with age for me. And another thing about it is it hasn't shown its age. Like, it's not dated. When I watch it now, when I watched it last night, it didn't come off like an older movie and like it was out of date and out of touch and didn't work anymore. It still works for me, and partially because of just the lore. Vampires, werewolves, that's timeless lore. That's always going to be like a thing. As far as I'm concerned, there's certain creatures and monsters that I don't think will ever really go out of style, So that's it. I could go a little bit more into stuff. I could talk more about the franchise as a whole. There's still a part of me that wants to do a Resident Evil franchise versus the Underworld franchise kind of expose or video or whatever, talking about the two franchises, because I think they have a lot of similarities. But that's neither here nor there. Maybe I'll get to that some other time. That's it. 8.5 out of 10 for Underworld. I do recommend it for obvious, fans of werewolves, fans of vampires, fans of action and gunplay, things like that. If you happen to like the Matrix movies and you like vampires and werewolves, then this is clearly the perfect movie for you. So I do recommend it highly in that regard. But that's it for now. Thank you for watching. More reviews on the horizon. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I will catch you on the next go round.